Howdy folks, and welcome to my review of the Dart Piranha Flyscreen on my 2018 Moto Guzzi V7III Stone. Well, so I sold my Ducati Multistrada, a very nice big adventure touring bike that I had prepped for long distance riding, and I switched to a naked bike. By virtue and definition of its style, this bike doesn't offer any wind protection at all, and if you live in southern Texas, that's a problem. Because A, you have to go places, and it's always a long distance, and mostly you go on there on the highway, and B, it's always windy. And so a naked bike at times can be a chore, particularly with this Moto Guzzi, because in its stock configuration, you sit on it extremely upright. And so when you are on the highway going 75 miles an hour, you are getting beat up with massive wind blast onto your torso and onto your helmet, and you're effectively just hanging on for dear life on these bars, and it's very uncomfortable and very tiring very quickly. And so I knew I needed some wind protection, but I didn't want to mess up the style of the bike. And so I did a lot of research figuring what is my best option. You know, Moto Guzzi has an OEM fly screen that they have. I thought that was kind of nice, but wasn't really my thing. It's very expensive. Rizoma has a very nice screen. You know, it's quite stylish, but also quite pricey and also quite narrow. And I wanted to have a screen that provides me good upper body protection, but also gives me a chance to be in clean air with my helmet. And so looked around, and I looked at Dart products. And Dart makes multiple screens. I believe their most popular line is their Merlin screen, which is a little taller, a little wider. They also have a classic screen, which is quite nice, but still wasn't the style I was looking for. And then I stumbled upon the Piranha. And the Piranha was my choice for a couple of reasons. A, it was relatively short, and I didn't want to really, like I said, visually impact the bike too much, so that was nice. Number two, as most Dart screens, it's also fairly wide. And I was looking for a way to have as much protection across my shoulders as possible. And number three was it came in this really cool gunmetal gray color. I believe they called it black metallic. The regular model is a gloss black, just a slightly transparent model, and this one's non-transparent. Like I said, they call it black metallic. It's really kind of like a gunmetal gray color. I thought it was really cool, so I went with it. Ordered the screen. Actually ordered this one in the UK in order to get this color. Took a while to get in. It came in. I installed it on the bike. I jumped on the bike, and I went for a ride. And well, it did okay, but not really. Let me tell you guys what happened. So, in this stock position, the screen does a really good job taking air off of my torso, and so I was no longer holding on for dear life on the bars. It made it much more comfortable to be in, particularly on a windy day. It was great, but as the wind comes off the screen and goes up, it generates roughly 12 inches of turbulent air, and so that was right smack into my helmet. And so I had great upper body protection, great torso protection, but my helmet sitting in turbulent air, buffeting all over the place, very uncomfortable. And so honestly, I was quite disappointed. I was just like, dang it, I did not want to trade torso protection for buffeting around my helmet. And so came back home, kind of looked at it and said, okay, well, something's not right. And I was looking at it and said, you know what, this angle of attack here in terms of how steep this thing is, I mean, it's obviously going to generate turbulence behind it. And I guess that turbulence just travels up and ends up hitting me in my helmet. So what can I do about that? Well, so after a little bit of contemplation and looking around, I decided I'm going to pull out the handy dandy file. I'm going to go to work on the bracket. So I went and actually filed off a whole bunch of material off of this bracket right here. In order to start adjusting angles. And as I was filing off a little bit, adjusted, and I got to the point where I actually filed off everything that I could without hitting the instruments. And so the angle I ended up with, and let me make this adjustment here real quick, is something like this. So much steeper rake here. But hopefully, I was hoping this would provide much better airflow. And so once I got to the stage, I took a bike out for a ride, was out on the highway, and damn, voila, it's actually working. The airflow, I still had the protection on my upper body, but my airflow towards my helmet was much smoother at that point in time. And as I rode around and kind of tested things out, I realized that my turbulent air had shifted from my helmet down towards my shoulders, and the width of the turbulent air for, like I said, about 12 inches went down to roughly maybe 6 or so. But it still wasn't optimal. I'm 5'11", 32-inch inseam, medium to longer torso. And so what I experienced was that when I sat bolt upright on the bike, my helmet was in clean air, and that was great. But when I slouched a little, that turbulent air, those 6 inches of turbulent air that was still there, were hitting me right around my upper shoulders to my neck. And so when I slouched, the bottom of my helmet got into the turbulent air, and that still wasn't very comfortable. And so I was happy that I got improvement, but I was still unhappy because I didn't quite get where I wanted to. And if you see my previous videos of what I did on the Multistrada, I really enjoy proper wind management on bikes and really remove turbulence from the riding experience. And so I continued to fiddle with it. And I went back to something that I had done a while back on my Harley. For inspiration, I went back to my Harley days where I had messed with door edge liner in order to tweak aerodynamics on the windshields on that motorcycle and on the wind deflectors on that motorcycle. And so I went into that toolbox again and I decided, I'm going to give this another try, because the more I looked at the screen, the more it reminded me of an airplane wing. And so if you look right here, the screen itself still has a little bit of a curvature to it. And I was thinking of it as, an airplane wing kind of has a curvature too. In order to create smoothness of the air, the plane's wing is kind of thicker in the front and thinner in the back. And this is fairly uniform, so maybe if I make the front a little thicker, I'll get there. And so I went and got this door edge guard, like I mentioned, and I got the SUV type, which is the thicker one. And I applied it to the screen, and I played with the dots, and I ended up settling in, or the spots, and I settled in on the one that kind of took this shape and extended it here, because I figured there's going to be lots of turbulence around the brackets anyways, so it won't make much of a difference. But on the smooth area here where the air just flows, I wanted to create a thicker edge. And so I added the door edge guard, still kept the steep rake, got out onto the road, and yeah, baby, I found my sweet spot. It was very interesting because initially it was really wishful thinking that this is going to work, but it actually did. And so what happened is that airflow still continued up, a very similar trajectory. It was right around the upper shoulders, but my dirty air went from those 6 inches of dirty air down to like 2. And luckily, the dirty air dropped down, which means it didn't matter if I slouched on the bike or if I sat upright. My helmet was still in clean air, while my torso received air protection. And so it was wonderful. I was really, really thrilled with it. And so after, I started using it as my regular screen, and I found another cool thing about the screen. And that was that despite this being the non-translucent option, I guess the material properties of this plastic are the same as the translucent screens or semi-translucent screens, meaning they let RFID signals go through. So I have my toll road tag stuck there on the inside of this screen, and it works perfectly fine. So even though it's not translucent, still works with a toll tag. So I thought that was great. Well, so very, very happy with this product. In the end, I had to fiddle with it a little bit, but I found my sweet spot. I'm very excited about it, and I can strongly recommend that you'll take a look at it. Some of you might be interested in seeing, okay, well, how impactful is it really in taking air off of your shoulders and off of your chest and allowing you to have highway comfort with this setup? I unfortunately don't have the equipment to measure air speeds, but there's somebody else on YouTube who has done this to a Dart Marlin screen. He had a little device to measure airspeed behind the screen. Search for it. I thought he did a really good job of doing that analysis. But I can give you this following reference point. I've, since buying the bike, have converted the bike, as you probably see, from the stock handlebars into those drop-down bars that are a little bit sportier. and I'll do a separate review on those coming here in the future. But I can clearly see the difference between this bike having the screen, not having the screen, in my riding experience the following way. If I ride the bike without the screen, which means completely naked, and I am in this slightly leant forward position with these bars on the bike now, I will have the wind carry my weight, my upper body weight, so essentially I'm floating on an air cushion at roughly 40 miles an hour. Very, very comfortable. But once I get to 70, 75, the wind blast actually gets to the point where I start hanging on to the bars. So at 40 miles an hour, the weight is taken off my wrists. But at 70, 75, I start gently hanging on to the bar, which is not bad, particularly if you have highway and kind of byway mix. That works out really quite well. With these right here, with this one installed, the Dart Piranha installed, the lift effect, so the point where I start going weightless on my wrists, doesn't kick in until about 65. And so while I still have a fair amount of weight on my wrist if I'm going slower than that, if I have a trip that includes some highway miles, some potentially longer highway miles, this thing's great because I effectively ride weightless at highway speed. And it's very comfortable and very, very relaxing, but still providing a good amount of protection for my torso, for bugs and everything else. And with this modification on the lip guard there, which essentially is just a door edge guard for an SUV, the airflow is also quite smooth and makes for a really, really pleasant riding experience. And so this has been my review of the Dart Piranha Flyscreen. Once again, I recommend this product. I do encourage you, if you get into it, feel free to fiddle with it to find a way to make it work for you on your specific motorcycle. And I hope with those little tweaks, you'll be just as happy with the product as I am. Thank you very much for watching. If you all enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe. I'm working on more videos on my Moto Guzzi modifications, and those will be coming your way shortly. Thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful day.